Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Africa's Big Switch with differently this time. I'm here with, my name is Bolaji and I'm here with Beatrice, Josh, and Hassana. So we're doing it differently this time in the sense of like we did last year where we reviewed the progress of the year and we kind of spoke about some of our favorite episodes. We're ending the year with the same type of thing, and Hassana is ready with a wine. um, but yeah, so I'm excited about this episode. It's been an interesting year, eventful. We've done so many episodes. We've explored new countries in Africa. Speakers from new countries in Africa. They've told their wonderful stories and sometimes, like, quite often very inspiring. So this episode will be very interesting. So just to kick it off, how has this year been for us? I'm going to go with Josh.
Been good. I think it's been fantastic. Been consistent. We've had some really good speakers, I think, and we've had some very interesting conversations. So it's been a good year. I think it's going to be a hard one to beat next year, but let's see.
Yeah, next year will be interesting. We have some big plans for ABS next year, but watch your space. Beatrice, how's the year been for you?
No, for sure. I agree with what Josh said. So I think it's been a very interesting year. And I think I was particularly impressed with the range when we look gender-wise and with the people we've been able to speak to. I was actually looking back and maybe we even overstepped the other way. Because we had quite a lot of women compared to men this year. But I'll say it was just balancing for the way that last year was, I'd say. So I think we're definitely heading in the right direction. And we're getting a good range of voices on the podcast. So I've been very impressed. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. I remember last year we noticed that if we didn't try to kind of like pursue certain profiles, it wouldn't just come naturally. So I'm glad that that's one of the highlights as well. And then finally, Hassana, how's the year been?
Well, I echo what everyone else is saying, especially like the points of the variety and everything. Because like the topics we've had compared to like last season was from botanical gardens to like fuel subsidy. So it's been a very good range and it's making me like optimistic for what we have in the future.
Interesting. I even forgot about botanical gardens. I thought that was last year, but that's wow. Like that's a lot. And then going into the episodes a bit more, what has been some of your favorite episodes? Go in reverse this time, Hassana.
Okay. But I have to actually. In fact, to be honest, all of them is quite hard to beat. But the main one for me will probably be the episode with Noel, where we spoke about understanding the effects of fuel subsidy in Nigeria, removal in Nigeria. So I think, especially being Nigerian, and I saw like how this whole fuel subsidy thing like affected so many people. It's good to like hear from someone's perspective where it's not the case of, oh, the government is bad, like what they're doing is terrible. But kind of listening to it in a way that it shows like there's a plan towards it. And it's like she was also like dropping facts. She took us through a journey. And I found that like very interesting. So and then the fact where she said spending on fuel was more than education, healthcare, and capital project combined was just like mind blowing. And it's like it's good for us to also take a step back and see that okay, it's not ideal, but there's actually hopefully there's a good plan that is going towards the funds that have been used for this fuel subsidy. Hopefully we'll see more development in like different areas. So I really, really enjoyed that. And the second one will probably be a Maria's episode on botanical gardening. That's like pretty off. Because it's like you could hear her.
It's close to home.
What's that?
It's close to home.
I mean, especially being from Adamawa, even like, or my mom being from Adamawa, like, hearing her passion, hearing how it made me really think about what's possible within Nigeria in terms of like the what do you call it? I don't say the garden space because not just the garden, but hopefully something called. But anyways, hearing what's possible because she said she's trying to build the Disneyland of Africa, basically, with what she has going on, and it's like there's so much potential that could have, and I actually can't wait to see what happens from it because we're so blessed with so many natural resources, and it's like it's high time we use it wisely. And yeah, so those are like my two main episodes, even though all of them were amazing, but those were the ones that stood out to me because they were quite personal, if I should say.
So your 2 episodes are from Nigeria. Let's not be
I
biased.
can go. Yeah, I can go. I'll take it to Ghana.
Let's
So,
go.
West Africa.
so I know. I think my favorite episode was probably the one with Edma. I thoroughly enjoyed speaking to her and with her about her company and what she does with Elo Petroleum and their provision of like manpower services to the oil and gas industry in Ghana. But I think the conversation even went way wider than that as a whole. I think one of the main things for me that she brought to the table that maybe we hadn't heard was around what it's taken her to start her business in Ghana. She kept mentioning patience throughout the episode. I think it's something that's easy to kind of just look over or overlook in general, but I thought that was very apt for a lot of people that are trying to look to start something new in the energy space or outside the energy space in African countries. And she was just discussing how the way that things are done in the country are different to maybe what you'd expect outside of the country. But I know that with the podcast, we're also looking to encourage people that are wanting to do something within the African space to go off and start to do those things and start to make an impact. So I think that's one tangible lesson that I personally picked up, and I think anybody else that's listening to us or listening to the podcast should be picking up as well, is that need for patience and understanding that things just don't happen overnight. I know in this age of like technology and seeing results straight away, it's easy to kind of be wanting direct results. But I think that was one very good point that she made. Another thing that she also was very open about was how closed off the industry is in Ghana. So she was saying that sometimes it's hard to get into, or it's a hard space to start to have an influence in, or to have connections or networks in. And she was just trying to explain to us how she went about doing that and opening up that space for herself. So I thought it was I think it's not something that people talk about often, and that nobody's ever really direct about how difficult it can be to build networks in those spaces. But I thought it was very useful for her to have mentioned that specifically. And then from that point, something that I never thought about before as well that made the episode quite interesting for me was her drawing the links between completely unrelated industries. So she mentioned how her working in media, so being a presenter and reading the news, helped her build a network in the oil and gas industry before she even got into it. And I thought that was like completely incredible. And it helps kind of teach me the lesson that you shouldn't overlook whatever it is that you're doing now. And honestly, when people say transferable skills or transferable opportunities, it's very genuine. And that was one other big thing I picked up. And finally, what I would say as well from me from that conversation was we spoke quite a bit about training for people and whether or not there's enough training for people within the continent. We referred to the Dangote refinery situation as well. And I think the big thing I picked up from that was while she was speaking about it, I know that we're trying to move towards a sustainable future on the African continent, even as we start to industrialize and improve energy access within the continent. I think one big thing, she kept emphasizing quite a few things that aren't so great about the energy industry right now on the African continent, particularly in the oil and gas space. So I thought it was a great place to start to identify things that we should not be doing as we develop this renewable energy space within the country. So things around like training, are we making sure that people that are coming to the country to develop projects aren't just coming in and bringing their own people, but also are we giving them quotas to make sure that they're improving our local people and ensuring that over time they start to phase out the higher number of people within there are companies in our countries that are foreigners, and they're starting to bring in more and more local content. So I thought that was also very interesting. And that was just one of the main points that I think she mentioned, that we cannot make the same mistakes as we develop our renewable energy economy within the African space. So that's why the episode was stood out to me for sure.
I enjoyed that episode. I remember I think we did it together. It was Edma is really inspiring.
Yeah, she's very passionate as well. I could just kind of you can see it. She's very passionate about what she does, and that showed through.
I'm getting some inspiration through her from you right now.
I have to actually say, to be honest, all the speakers, like you could hear how like passionate they were, and also another good thing I picked out was like how young, not all of them, but a lot of them were. So it shows that proactive roles that young people are doing right now in the energy space, and how they can actually even contribute, because you think, oh, this person just young, what do you know? But they actually know so much. So it's so good they can voice this on the podcast.
Yep. I was going to say, like, no matter where you are right now, there's something that you can do and you can be excellent at. I think that was,
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and I think the diversity in the age as well was really good, because like you mentioned, Hassana, with Mary, I'm talking about botanical gardens from a different part of Nigeria, and then going all the way to Nana, who spoke on sustainable and impact investing. And to me, that was one of my favorite episodes. One, because like she was so passionate about what she was talking about. She knew her stuff, and like the experience in which she was like, the experience she had with ESG in investing in Nigeria. I didn't even know all of that was happening with the healthcare centers in Lagos and other parts of the country. But also just highlighting that we have money to invest in these things, like the pension funds in Nigeria. There's money there for investments. It's just a case of building trust and connecting the right people with each other, and just like selling it in terms of the value that it can lead to. So I think like the episode with Nana on sustainable and impact investing in Nigeria was incredible to me. Also because I'm not in the finance space, so I hear some cool finance words and I'm like excited. But I think another episode that I found really cool, so that's going from Nigeria, okay, we're going back to Ghana, was the one with Bradley. Maybe it's very biased, but because Bradley and I are kind of friends. But I found him like just really interesting, just like really cool in what he does. But the content in the episode as well, because I remember we explored. I think I explored with Hassana in the episode. We spoke to Bradley together.
Yeah, we spoke to Bradley together.
Yeah, because I remember on that episode we looked at the policy making approach and how I guess advanced the thinking with the way they've been able to map out the energy transition plan, going to the communities, getting the feedback, testing ideas, and even getting new ideas from just that engagement. I think that for me, I was quite impressed seeing an African government go to that level to make policies, because of some of the experiences we may have had in Nigeria. That's all I'm ready to say. Josh.
I think you segued right nicely into my episode when we're talking about Nana's episode, in terms of how you build that network of people that want to collaborate on projects. I think that's what our episode with Kellyanne touched on a lot, in terms of her media business, almost in the sense of helping businesses or financiers channel investments into the energy space in Africa. I thought the episode was really good. I thought it was interesting to hear from her perspective as well, how the challenges she faced in running the business, particularly like during COVID and coming out of COVID as well. Like I thought it was very interesting. I think ultimately, like it's these media campaigns, it's these kind of industry events that actually make an industry move forward. I think they're the ones that share the whispers. They're the ones that, influence each other ultimately. And I think that like was the kind of overwhelming idea that came out of that episode for me when after speaking with her. And it's just interesting, like being able to connect with so many different people as well that have different mindsets, but also have a singular goal, like for example, energy transition, and how that plays out in the oil and gas sector versus, the energy needs of a particular state, which we're going to see all these conversations come up in COP28 as well this year. So, yeah, I think the episode with Kellyanne to me was probably my favorite episode for the year.
But you know what's interesting? I was just like, I actually just remembered that we had some earlier ones that were really cool. Because remember we like started recording, we released, and then we had a break. And then we started like we restarted in terms of recording. So I feel like a lot of the ones like we may have said at like towards the end. But I just remembered that we had a really cool episode with Rahul on powering health centers in Africa. And I just learned so much. And like it's just, and I can't believe that was this year. It seems like it was ages ago. But I feel like from like I think that was the first episode this year. And then looking all the way like to even Vula. I think Beatrice and I did Vula with Nicholas. like really cool ideas on like the continent. Wow.
Yeah, I found the episode with Rahul very interesting as well. And I know that from last year's episodes, we spoke a little bit about like productive use of energy. And I think that was the one episode maybe that we did this year that was very direct around a direct application of energy usage, obviously around healthcare centers in Africa. And he was spewing out a lot of data and information about obviously like how many people are going without that are going and having to use the healthcare centers without any energy access at all, without some of them with very unreliable energy access. Obviously, he was speaking a little bit about this number of healthcare centers in sub-Saharan Africa as well that don't have the numbers, but that don't have energy access. And I think those numbers were huge. I think I can't remember what the number was, but was it something around like was it 2 billion people, 1 or 2 billion people around the world that don't have access to only have access to healthcare centers that don't have any access to electricity or very unreliable access to electricity, which is huge. And he said majority of those are in sub-Saharan Africa. But also at the same time, then saying what SE for All is doing in that space to not only assist governments and public sector, but to also assist private companies to get the information and the data that they need to make a difference. So I thought that was very poignant because health is one of the basic human needs, right? And people that are using these centers are the most vulnerable people. The older people that are like pregnant women, people that have chronic illnesses and so on. So I thought that was very impactful, and it was a good tangible example of the difference that energy access can make. So I thought that was very cool.
Also, it sounds like all our speakers are like have very incredibly busy lives as well. When
Yep.
you think about these solutions that they're trying to put together, like it's inspiring.
Yeah. And I think like from some of the ways we've kind of reflected on the year, we've explored energy in healthcare. We've explored using media to raise finance. We've explored like ESG type investing. The startups we've looked at, they are building both software and hardware solutions in the energy space in Africa. We've explored what other topics am I missing? We had policy.
Bringing funds as a startup. What was the exact topic?
We raising something as a startup.
People are helping African startups raise funding.
Yes, funding. Yes. Like exactly. Raising funding
as well. Social development.
We covered oil and gas. Like providing auxiliary services to oil and gas companies with EDMA. We looked at the legal perspective, like energy law. We've looked at a range of different topics that like, if you don't, like, it's so easy to forget that we actually like went a bit broad. We looked at, in Malawi, we spoke to Pam from an NGO perspective, providing like sustainable solutions to people. Guys, we've like, I think we tried this year.
I think we've done quite well. Even from the solar space as well, just different solutions that different businesses are bringing in. Obviously, in Nigeria, we had a session on Nigeria and then one on Rwanda most recently. So different approaches. So the solar marketplace idea with Natasha, and then we also spoke to Eda most recently about the solar solutions that they have in Rwanda. So I think that was also because I think solar is a fast moving technology and it's very quickly being deployed across African countries. So I think it was very tangible to speak to different people in that space, but in different countries. So yeah, that was insightful for sure.
And then geography-wise, what countries did you cover, guys? Tell me.
So Rwanda, I think we did Rwanda, Malawi,
Burundi. So Rwanda, Malawi, Burundi.
I don't know if I'll say UK with Bula. Would you say? So I'm just like,
to my understanding, that's kind of still remote.
That's still remote, yeah. So remote, okay.
But Nicholas grew up in South Africa, so he gave us an insight into his some of the years that he spent in South Africa, though.
Yeah, that was true. What else? Nigeria, of course. Why are we forgetting Nigeria?
Ghana.
Ghana. Have we said what?
Malawi, Burundi.
We have said, yeah. Yeah. I think that's and obviously some people that are based in the UK but doing stuff in Africa. So yeah, really, really interesting. Um, cool.
I was wondering, what's been the most, I guess, shocking revelation from the episodes that we've had? Is there anything that anyone's mentioned or said that's kind of stood out to you, surprisingly, or otherwise?
I'll probably say, like, I think I already mentioned it, but it's that like funding, like government funding, basically. Well, for sorry, let me rephrase. Basically, the full spending by the government is more than the healthcare capital and just like education combined. Not even like, okay, they're spending more than healthcare, is like combined, which is, I don't want to say it's crazy because like it's good, but like they said, like, these are other more important areas that actually need more focus. Like, it's great that we get cheaper fuel, but lives need to actually improve in those other aspects compared to like, getting extra money, extra cuts for fuel. So that one really like blew my mind because I wasn't aware of that before, but now being aware of it, I'm like, okay, I'm not 100% for the removal of the fuel subsidy, but I'm just like, okay, if the money can be used better, then why not?
Yeah, I know that during that episode, one big statement she made was when she started the response to her answer, she was like, nobody wants the fuel subsidy to come back. And I was like, no, actually, I think there are loads of people. But then when she obviously went further to explain what she meant by that, obviously, you made it a lot clearer around other better ways that the fuel subsidy can be used, and the fact that we're even borrowing to cover the fuel subsidy costs. And that was very insightful for sure.
I mean, personally, the only episode that comes back to my head is Dr. Trevor's episode from last year for some reason. That's probably the most shocking things where he talks about how we need to stop training window wipers because of the technology that we still use, for instance, solar, and how it was such a contrast to nuclear in terms of how much power generation it can give. And he was right in a way, but it's just quite interesting how he wanted better for, his people of Africans to be trained better, and he saw that as an opportunity to say, the job basically of maintaining the solar farm is kind of window wiping, which was just quite outrageous, but it's just funny when you think about it in context. But yeah, that's probably the most shocking thing I've
I
heard.
remember. For me, one thing that stood out to me was when we're speaking to Natasha Ivory, and she was talking about a startup, and she was saying how even within the same country, within Nigeria, you would have customers wanting a different way of service. So like she said, like in the South, they want to see a physical office, and they want to know that like if I buy the solar panel, I want to see like someone to hold accountable. But maybe like in Lagos, like everything is more like it's online. Like people just buy things and they deliver it to their house and they fix it up. And once I have a number I can call, then that's also fine. So for me, like understanding that even within the same country in Africa, right? I mean, first of all, Africa is not is not a country, but even within this country, right, with different cultures, different expectations in terms of customers. So as a startup, or as a business like owner, you probably want to think about how to tailor those offerings across the different geographies. So I think that was one thing that stood out to me. Um, another episode that I felt was really interesting was Hubert's episode. Walking. So I don't know. I think just the idea of walking in places that are often seen as dangerous to be in. I think he spoke about some of his projects in DRC and having to get the community on board with the project, provide training, make sure that there's buy-in in the community before, it's not just you build a solar farm and then you just leave them to figure it out themselves. There's a lot of thought and planning that goes into it. So I think that gave me a little bit more insights into how you would deliver complex projects, not because the project themselves might be complex, but because the environment is more of a complex one. Those two episodes, I think I would say I learned a lot from. Let me think. There was a statement that Pam made in the Malawi episode, and I was like fascinated, and it was something regarding how at the end of the day, NGOs, because it's not a business, the kind of work they do is largely influenced by their donors, and the amount of work they can do is influenced by the money they have. So that, sometimes you get more money to do more things, and you do that, and that's good. And other years you just don't get as much money. But I think she said, like, you have to run it like a business in terms of looking at tangible outputs, tangible benefits, hold yourself accountable to it, not just like someone has given me free money and I'm just going to spend it. And as long as I spend it improving someone's life, then, that's a win. I think like those 3 episodes, like just from the top of my head, like I was just like excited listening to them.
No, for sure. And with that episode with Pam as well, and I think you ran through another episode, maybe it was the one around the botanical gardens as well. Obviously, because they're both not for profit, they were speaking about, okay, this is what we're running, we're trying to make this impact, but also we don't have control over like the money that we're spending on these projects. They're from other people and so on. But I know that towards the end of all of these conversations, we delved into directions that were referring to how those organizations could also make money to make themselves more sustainable. Because I'm not sure if you remember, I think it was yourself and I, Bolaji, on the that episode with Pam, but she then got into speaking a little bit around how they were potentially looking at ways to make money from carbon credits from some of these stoves that they were providing to local communities. So I know that no matter what it is, a lot of these organizations are also looking for ways to make their activities and projects even more sustainable through those sort of solutions. So I thought that was a very different way of thinking for a company or for an organization like Ripple Africa that Pam worked with. So that was very interesting as well.
Yeah, and even just to like add to like what Bolaji mentioned regarding like Natasha's episode, like being able to like adapt to like different, should I say, customers or different regions as well. Because I think even as human beings, companies, we have this idea of one size fits all, for like, just because I know this is what I want or this is what I've heard somebody wants, that's what we're going to do across board. Like even the move towards like net zero as well. Like what works for China might not work for Nigeria or might not work for Ghana or something like that. And I think that's very important for people to also remember. So it's like, even though she's just sharing her experience, oh yes, we noticed that in the East maybe they want it this way, and in the West they want it this way. But it's just like, if you look at it on a bigger scale, it's just like people need to really consider like adaptability and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah. And I remember asking Natasha on the episode, like, how do you know when to pivot? Because I think they had an idea and they pivoted to a new one. And for me, like, it's interesting looking at things from the outside in, but like sometimes it's just simple. Like the customers want this, so we decided to give them what they want, as opposed to being something like so complicated. But one episode that we haven't mentioned, which was really cool, so I wasn't on it, but I listened to it back and I thought it was really cool, was Aaron Energy and Emmanuel trying to build manufacturing capabilities in Nigeria. Who did that episode? Was it Hassana?
I was on the episode.
I think it was Beatrice and I.
It was Josh and I, yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
But that, to be honest, I thought that was last year, actually, to be honest.
It's been a long year. Josh, you need to move on.
Concept of time is completely warped.
Honestly.
No, that was interesting too. That was interesting too. We spoke to him a little bit about, I think he's primarily based in Enugu, if I'm correct.
Yeah, correct.
And we obviously focused a little bit around his supply chain and like where he gets his raw materials from, and like the assembly that's then being done at their workspaces and facilities in Enugu at the moment. I thought it was very interesting. Because obviously we're speaking to him a little bit about how he tries to, the kind of issues that he's had, and if he had any like stories that he had to tell about working in the country and trying to ensure like the right quality. So give us some good, interesting stories about like somebody that he had hired and employed, and how basically the relationship hadn't ended up in a good way. But also at the same time, he also gave us stories around like around they're getting their raw materials and how quality and ensuring quality of raw materials was always a big issue, and it's still an issue that he has to monitor quite closely. And I think that's probably something that anyone that's working in I don't want to speak for any other African countries, but I would assume that it's similar in many other African countries, that sometimes it can be difficult to get that quality control of raw materials that you're getting, and just making sure that you keep an eye on what you're using, the products that you have, because a lot of the products that are used in the energy space can end up having a detrimental effect on people's lives eventually, either because they're unreliable or because they could end up being a hazard by themselves if you have the wrong materials. And we like to joke when I was doing my degree in university in chemical engineering that everything, when you're doing risk assessments, anything can end up in a fire. So you always have to be cautious. So I thought that was one big point that he definitely made, and I thought was interesting, around focusing on that supply chain, ensuring that whenever they're getting materials from outside the country or within, that he's looking and making sure that his team are looking at that.
No, 100%. And I think more businesses should honestly consider that. But I'm glad, like, I think there are regulations now that like really make paying attention to these things. Like it's +1 for the regulators rather. So.
Yeah, and it's if you look at things in contrast as well, because we looked at iron energy in Nigeria, and that's hardware, that's like solar, but like hardware and like a lot of planning and like assembling and some even manufacturing. You now go all the way to Rwanda, and when we spoke to Eda, and like according to him, like they can get solar panels on your roof in a week once you sign the contracts. Like just understanding the different policy environments and seeing how startups kind of function in those environments. I think that was interesting. And I think one of the episodes I really, really enjoyed, but just like also just because I just thought she was really cool, was Chineye Ajayi. There was like a very strong call to action, I remembered, and she was just like, I think that end part actually just like played for next year in January just to get me motivated. But I really enjoyed it, like looking at the legal perspective of the electricity market in Nigeria, understanding I think there was a deregulation in Nigeria that happened recently that gives states the ability to form their own laws surrounding the electricity market in Nigeria. So just uncoupling that for us and just explaining what that actually means in terms of investor relationship, in terms of the government, in terms of what we should demand from our state governors. I know guys are talking about restructuring in Nigeria, but this was electricity restructuring, but maybe the other one we'll talk about that one in another episode. But yeah, really cool episodes.
Yeah, that was insightful for sure. Yeah, so I was just going to say, I thought it was interesting because she was obviously being very specific around, like you were saying, what that means for us in Nigeria now and the opportunities that then brings. So she was saying that essentially means that within every state they can make laws around distribution and around generation and distribution of electricity. And what that basically means is that individuals, smaller companies, smaller businesses can literally go to the state governments now and put in bids for contracts to do for generation and for distribution, which I think it would completely change the market. And she was just saying this is the time for people to get in there and get in there now. And I think that's super exciting because it would just generate more competition and allow smaller startups and potentially smaller businesses to get into the market and completely change the space for the country. So I'm super excited about that and super excited to see what that means for the country and changes that it brings over the next couple of years for sure. And I hope people take advantage, including people like ourselves outside the country.
Exactly what I was thinking about. It's like, guys, how do we buy our own plants now? Like, let's enter this market. But okay, really cool episodes. Really busy year. And I think like you can see like a good trajectory and like even the number of offerings. We've covered the topics, the geographies, the diversity in age, diversity in backgrounds and so on and so forth. But looking forward, what are you most excited for, or what are you looking forward to for ABS next year?
Looking forward, like, to be honest, just carrying on what we're doing already. like personally, I hope like it's going well, and then hopefully more like, should I say, live events. Like we had some in the background like planned, so hopefully actually being able to like do it next year. And then in terms of the speakers, I really like the question that we always used to round up, like if we were given an all expense paid trip, where would you go? But then I also want to like add to that where wherever they are right now, like let's say they're in Rwanda or Nigeria, like where would you recommend to go? Like wow, like in the country that you're currently in. So I think that's also like an opportunity for people to like they say, oh, let me go there. Like it's not wishful thinking, it's like what you have on hand now.
It could be somewhere in their own country as well, right?
Okay.
Somewhere in the country that they would recommend because they have probably lived it and they can directly tell the listeners, exactly why it's a nice place to visit. I like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
For sure.
Beatrice?
For me, yeah. So for me, I think what I'm looking forward to for ABS next year would definitely be to reach more of an audience. And I see an exponential growth for sure in our listeners and people that are engaged on social media. Follow ABS on social media. I'm passionate about that for sure. But yeah, so people that we're able to reach potentially through live events like Hassana already mentioned and otherwise, and even live events virtually as well for ABS, and I'm excited for that as well. And we just need more of you guys to tell your friend, tell a friend, to listen to the podcast, or just send them an episode for them to listen to, and I'm sure they'll be hooked from that point.
100%. And guys, you don't have to be in the energy space to listen to it. I think Josh and Hassana, by the time they joined the podcast, they weren't as active in the energy space, but now they're subject matter experts from interviewing so many people. But yeah, 100%. I think for me, what I'm looking forward to next year is a combination of things. So firstly, I'm looking at how we can provide more value to our listeners and the people that are excited and working in this space. So for example, is there a medium they would like to receive the information in? How do we be more visible and engage in our communities, either physically, but also in terms of the video offerings? So that's why we're actually like doing this video recording to kind of try to see what it's going to look like. And just to engage more people, meet new people. I think for me, like, even if it wasn't recorded, I would still want to meet these people and just talk to them about their lives. So I'm just looking forward to meeting like more people, and especially like across new like markets, in terms of new countries, but also like new spaces, and in terms of subjects, and maybe hydrogen. That would be cool. Maybe we get someone from wind energy. We almost did, but next year, by God's grace. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
What I'm looking forward to next year is sustainable energy being on top of everyone's agenda. But no, really, I'm looking forward to a lot for ABS next year. I think we've done a terrific job this year. And like, really thank you to our listeners for following us on this journey. It's a journey, and we're unraveling at a speed that we didn't expect, I think. And I think what mostly, like Bolaji, like what you said, I'm just going to echo it, is we're just looking for new ways to create value for people that are listening to us and create value for our speakers as well. So yeah, hopefully we can do that.
Yeah, and ABS will be at COP28. Josh, do you want to say a few words about COP28?
Let's see where the chips fall. I think it's going to be very interesting. The fact it's in Abu Dhabi as well is very interesting because, that's a major energy player in the world, especially in the oil and gas market. So talking about sustainable energy and the impacts of climate change on the world and how that needs to be financed through the transition is going to be quite an interesting conversation. I'm intrigued to hear what the Middle East and the rest of the surrounding region has to say about the kind of actions they're going to make. I know there's already a lot of sustainable targets being set out for 2050 and beyond in Saudi Arabia. But it's going to be interesting to find out how they want to transfer that knowledge onto developing countries, countries in Africa, see how like the different energy solutions that could possibly be adapted and climate controls, etc. So I hope that's the focus of this COP28, to really talk about, okay, we've been talking about this for so long. We've talked about financing vehicles. There's so many options out there right now. How do we make it work for each country across the globe? And what's the plan? Who are we going to keep accountable? Who wants to be kept accountable, etc. So yeah, I'm really intrigued for it.
Sweet. So yeah, follow us on ABS, LinkedIn, Instagram, Africa's Big Switch. Search. We'll be at COP28 in Dubai, and you might find me just like bothering some guys, just asking them questions like, guys, what do you think about this in Africa? But I'm also looking forward to hearing about adaptability, how countries are able to adapt to the effects of climate change, because we know that there's a possibility that we don't achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius increase in temperature. So what then? So that's what I'm actually looking forward to hear. And if there's no other, I guess, points in terms of the year, in terms of reflection, I would like to, I guess, ask the question we always ask everyone. So in reverse, if you were to travel anywhere in Africa on an all expense paid trip, where would it be and why? And then the new question we introduced like 2 seconds ago, where have you been in Africa that you'd like to recommend someone to visit? Hassana.
Wow. I get to think anyway. So for like to visit, I think last time, if I remember correctly, I think I said Ghana. But then this time now, I think South Africa has my heart in the sense of like, again, with Ghana.
Let's go and party.
I mean, with Ghana, it said, with Ghana.
You're allowed.
But no, I'm a piano. I don't know, for some reason. I didn't get into it until this year. But then even aside from I'm a piano, like just South Africa in general, like everything they're up to, even in terms of like, who did we even speak to last year? What's his name? That had the nuclear energy. I'm trying to remember. Do you remember?
Dr. Trevor,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like seeing what they're doing in the energy space as well is very incredible. And then being able to mix that and then their energy, their vibe, the enjoyment is there. So it's like work plus good time combined. So why not like South Africa? So that's one of the places I actually want to visit. Because besides that, we're always going abroad. And we're always this America, this. But
yes, Hassana.
When it's within Africa, and I was just like, what have you been here? Just like, so I'm one of those bad examples where I haven't really been anywhere else in Africa apart from Nigeria. So it's just like I need to actually improve on that. But being Nigerian, I'll say Lagos. I mean, well, what else is there? The only thing
where the party is. Hassana is just all about the parties. That's your plug, by the way.
But you know, Lagos is also where like the businesses that are also any top business you want to find that is working in Nigeria is in Lagos. You know, a food blogger, like they have so many amazing restaurants. Like every day I keep opening like let's say Instagram or something, and I'm seeing one restaurant that has this flashy new thing, and I'm just in Nigeria. This is happening in Nigeria. So there's so many places to visit actually. So Lagos is always creative. Lagos is like where the businesses are. So there's just so much happening there. And you're going to have a good time. So why not?
When Hassana means energy, she means a different type of energy, by the way.
Oh, do you know, people like I'm being serious for this. Like she want to wine, she want to have a party, right?
No, it's a judgment-free zone. Don't worry.
Love it.
And follow. Is it Chop Life Daily or has it changed now? It's no longer Chop Life.
Chop Life Abuja. There's Chop Life Abuja, but the UK version is Indulge in London. So come on. Indulge.
Okay. So come and indulge in London or follow Chop Life Abuja for your food blogs in Nigeria.
Also,
I can jump in because I was actually going to say South Africa as well, and specifically Cape Town. Because I've seen photos and just the idea that it's on the coast, it has mountains, and it's just has good life to kind of experience and good energy. But I think I'll go for Egypt as like my second one or maybe first one now. Again, for the same reason that I think Rahul mentioned on his episode, that I really like history and I like culture and understanding like the people that live in a certain place. And Egypt seems to have a lot of information and history around like old civilizations and so on. So I'm super excited for whenever I do get the chance to go to Egypt. And for somewhere I would recommend, again, it would probably be in Nigeria, would be Ile-Ife in Osun State, which is where I grew up. So not biased at all, but I grew up there. Again, and honestly, for the exact same reason as Egypt, again, people believe that it's where the Yoruba people of West Africa originate from. So there's so much history there, and I think you should definitely visit if you're ever in the country. It's probably about a 3 to 6 hour drive from Lagos, depending on the weather and depending on the traffic. But yeah, I think if you get a chance, you should definitely visit. And I'm sure that there are quite a few touring companies that now do tours to Ile-Ife or to Osun State if you're interested. So that would be my answer.
That's cool. I think I'll go next. So for me, I think South Africa as well. I'm slightly biased because I saw Trevor Noah yesterday, and the guy was absolutely amazing. So if all South Africans are like Trevor Noah, then yeah, probably. But for an all expense paid trip, I think I like luxury a lot. I think South Africa will probably offer the best for me in that respect. But also because of the reasons I've been mentioned. I think the landscape is quite beautiful. It's a very aesthetic country, and like people are nice and a lot of life there, similar to Nigeria. So probably that's where I'd go. In terms of where I'd recommend, I recommend Marrakesh, Morocco, because I've heard there are close similarities. I hope no one takes offense, but I've heard that there are close similarities being in the Maghreb region. I think there's a lot of rich culture. There's a lot of history in Marrakesh. We went to like different areas there, the YSL Museum as well, which I thought was quite interesting. The food as well, it's so tasty, and the people are just, they just know how to party as well. So it was just really cool to be out in that environment.
And then for me, it would probably be like Namibia. Because I've just heard they have amazing views. Like they have a desert that kind of meets the ocean, and I think it's a part of Africa that I've never been to. So it would just be cool. Like if someone's gonna pay for a trip, it would be somewhere like it would be Namibia for me. And where would I recommend someone to visit in terms of where I've experienced? I would say, so I'm from Osun State, so Ile-Ife is top there, but exactly. But somewhere else I would say is I would say it's probably okay. So it's between Kaduna or Josh.
I think you're going to say Adama because last time you had some good things to say. Now it's just like
Adama always see you guys are putting me in a tight spot. Anyway, but I'm gonna stick with just because I think my dad worked there, so I stayed there for like a summer, and it's first of all, it's cold. Like you're like, am I in Nigeria? You're freezing. And the views is very like, it has a lot of mountains, and I think coming from Lagos, when I went there the last time, I was like, the roads are good. I was like, what's happening in Lagos? It's very diverse as well. It's a nice intersection where a lot of trade happens, a lot of cultures meet. And I think it has a lot of there's some like, I think we went to like a wildlife resort at the time, which was pretty cool. So Jos is there. Hassana is pulling me to say Adama. So yeah.
No,
Yola.
I have to echo. Like I've been to Jos as well. It's quite nice. It's been a few years. I won't lie. But Jos is actually quite nice. Cold. I don't know if you saw on Twitter where someone posted about like they got posted to Jos, and then someone had their like khaki in like snow, like they were khaki in like the NYC like closing snow. That because literally that's what Jos is. That is so cold. Like I literally have to bring like a winter jacket.
Yeah.
Not extra, but it's like it's actually very cold. But yeah,
100%.
Like in Jos, if you go out, they know how to have a good time.
As soon as I know this, I've lived this. So what I'm hearing is Hassana, myself, and Josh will go to South Africa. So if anybody's listening and wanting to sponsor us, because we're all in agreement.
You guys
not
can
want
drop me
Bolaji.
now. Drop me in Namibia now. You guys. So what I am hearing is Hassana is the party ABS person. Beatrice is the history person. Josh is the luxury guy. This is the frame behind. God knows how much is what. And then I don't know what I am. You're a serious guy.
No, more. It sounds like business. You're talking about like trade.
Business. By God's grace next year. More
I would
money.
say philosophical.
Philosophical. Okay, fair enough. I'll take. It's all good things anyway. But yeah, that's it, guys. That's the review for the year. Thank you everyone for listening. Like we mentioned or hinted during the episode, next year is going to be super interesting. We're going to come with new offerings, more visuals, more engaging content, speaking to new like podcasts, guests from all around Africa. So follow us on Instagram, follow us on LinkedIn. We'll probably have a few more coming up. But listen to our podcast episodes on every major streaming platform that you can get your hands on. Thank you again for listening.
Also, appreciate any feedback you have. So,
Sure. Good point. Yeah. Any reviews, send it to us. I think you can do reviews on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but if not, just send us a message on Instagram. And we would appreciate that.
Thanks for a great year, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bye everyone. And take care.